10 biggest changes in BC. Vanilla and classic.
You are not prepared.
A lot of changes. Dude.
Hey guys, what's up, MadSeason?
Before I start the video, I want to just ask you guys a question. Are you guys more excited about TBC than vanilla? I was really excited for vanilla, but I feel like the way that, like, you know, playing it on stream and everything changed it. I didn't really have as much of a good time. And now that I kind of have the experience that I had with classic, I feel like in, in Burning Crusade, I'll actually enjoy it a lot more.
In here, back with another video for you. There are rumblings of a classic recreation of the Burning Crusade.
Yeah.
Just like how they did with vanilla. So I thought it would be an interesting video to break down the biggest differences between the two.
MadSeason
On the surface, it seems simple. Classic is successful, so do the same thing that you did with Classic to the Burning Crusade. But the first difference will become apparent very quickly, and that's class balance. It's undeniable. The class balance in Classic is pretty bad.
Yeah, it is.
We all know the situation. Someone rolls a Retribution Paladin, you want to raid, and either they're denied a spot entirely, or they're kind of made fun of for being a meme spec.
Well, they have to be the Guildmaster. And that's why I said before about Classic, fucking like Classic WoW, like raid leaders and shit, is you have to be the Guildmaster. Like, in order to raid as a Ret Paladin, you have to be GM. And at that point, you just get all the gear. Right? Because it's like, at that point, they had to lose roll on tier 2 helmet to a Holy Pally. That's right. Well, it's like, in a way, it's like, I don't really... It's like Classic WoW, the thing is, like, anything that I say about, like, how to allocate gear, right, in Classic WoW, always comes with the caveat that it actually doesn't matter because everything in the game is so fucking easy. So, like, if I say that, oh, yeah, you shouldn't give gear to a Ret Paladin because it won't really affect their damage because they suck, then you can come back and say, who cares, you're going to kill the bosses anyway. You know what I mean? So it's just this weird situation. A BC is much better than that is.
I like Ret Pallies though, and I say that as a warrior. You ever have that ugly friend you'd walk next to make yourself look better? That's the relationship between a Ret Pally and a warrior.
That's actually true.
We'll see if I'm still in the guild after that one.
Yeah, he's in
But on a
Asmongold
serious
guild.
note,
He's out.
I think there is a guild for everyone, and you definitely can find a guild as a Ret Pally or a Boomkin.
Yep,
or
we have
whatever
Star
non-optimal
Chicken.
spec you want to play.
Of course.
But it's definitely harder. I mean, it's understandable. It's the growing pains in the game's birth.
Yep.
World of Warcraft set the standard of what MMOs were in the mid-2000s. When you have no set standard, it's common to have extremely awkward or clunky things such as uneven class balance. It's not without its pluses. It's part of the charm, I think. It gives everyone a unique role and niche. But this is something that was...
What's a Moonkin's role? What do they stand outside the raid? That's how they just stand outside the raid, man. Oh, they put up the crit buff, yeah. A Ret Paladin's role, dude. That's get all the warriors gear, man. That's the Ret Paladin's role right there. Get all the warrior gear.
Vastly improved in the Burning Crusade. No longer are Retribution Paladins the butt of all jokes in PvE. They're actually pretty good.
Yeah, they're alright.
Especially if you're Horde. Speaking of Horde and Alliance balance though, it's also in the Burning Crusade is when the Alliance got Shamans with the Draenei race, and the Horde got Paladins with the Blood Elf race.
Oh, I made it a lot easier for them to balance,
Classic,
too.
you have an advantage or disadvantage depending on your faction for certain fights, and even the meta of endgame raiding. For example, two-handed Fury Warriors are much better on Horde than they are on Alliance due to the Wind Fury totem. But back to general class balance, Shadow Priests had their mana issues addressed, Protection Paladins got a taunt, Druid tanks were both...
Dude, like, Prop Paladin in Burning Crusade was one of the greatest experiences ever in my life. Because, like, before then, like, I was a shit tank back then. Like, I really was. And I'm a shit tank now, but I was a really shit tank back then. And just playing in BC with a Prop Paladin tank where I just put one thing down and I just have aggro on everything and I do a lot of damage, it was the greatest feeling ever. I loved it.
Literally and figuratively beasts.
Yeah.
In DPS, tanking, and healing, every class and spec got much closer to each other in viability for
Yeah,
both
it did.
PvE and PvP.
Well,
so in the context of re-releases, where you see this hyper
it's because of buffs too.
players won't be punished as much for picking a spec that they didn't know was weaker in the grand scheme of things.
But yeah, what about the people that picked it anyway? Sorry for pausing so much. I do want to say though, like one of the reasons why Burning Crusade did really well on like having class variety in the different raids is each different spec, almost every spec in the game, in Burning Crusade brought its own unique buff. And what made that good is that you would bring the class over the player, but it also meant that they didn't have to worry as much about making sure that every single class was numerically balanced against each other, because each one would still have a role inside of the raid.
In the context of re-releases, knowledge is power. It's still true in BC, but in the context of class balance,
BC
it's
will
less
also be very
punishing
easy
than
for
compared
people.
to Classic.
Wait, that was like my character. I had the Crystal Forge War Axe too.
Since the dawn of time, man has dreamed of breaking free from his gravitational prison and taking to the skies.
That's
and
true.
apparently peeing on people.
What?
Next, we have something just as controversial as that, and that's of course flight. The Outland was the first area in the game where you could actually fly.
I like that.
Unlocked at level 70, it cost a hefty amount of gold, or sex for the more industrious players, but that's another story, and was trainable in 2 different speeds.
Those were the days.
And with the birth of flying, also came the argument of if it's good or bad for the game.
That's actually true. Like, you think about like how much people cared about WoW back then, dude. They would literally fucking have sex with somebody for a mount. Like nowadays, there are girls and they'll like maybe send you like one titty picture, and you have to get them Gladiator for that. You have to get them all the way to Gladiator for that. And it's crazy how much it's been devalued. You know what I mean? It's awful.
It's more convenient. It makes the world seem small. It's the natural progression. It ruins world PvP.
Yeah.
I think for BC
All
it's
the flying
fine
negatives.
because after all, the zones were designed around it. You couldn't even zone into the Tempest Keep without it.
Right.
And until a certain patch, you couldn't even summon people up there. Whatever your thoughts are, it's in the game and the Outland, and it's a big change from what players are used to in
I like
Classic.
flying in Outland.
World PvP isn't the only avenue to blow off some steam, however. The Burning Crusade also saw the release of the Arena PvP system, where teams of 2, 3, or 5 square off against each other in a
I remember
no-holds-barred
buying arena
deathmatch.
teams, man.
Whereas in Classic, where the PvP system
Fucking
rewarded
arena,
more
man.
time and investment than anything, this is where the men are separated from the slightly more sweaty and unkept men.
Yep.
You play matches, gain or lose ranking,
God,
and
dude,
earn
this was
points,
so fun.
and these points are then spent on special PvP gear, which is locked by ranking. There is a certain skill involved in
man.
the old rank 14 PvP system, certainly.
I really enjoyed doing arena back in Burning Crusade. Like, that was my main thing. And I remember the day that I got my sword, my 1800 or 1850 sword, and then I got my 2K shoulders, was like one of the best days ever. I was so fucking happy, man. Like, I have so many good memories from doing, and also bad memories. I have equally many bad memories as good memories of doing arena and Burning Crusade. And I think that goes to show that it was really fun.
Just being a good PvPer and knowing the battlegrounds and having good teamwork will go a long ways.
Yeah.
But it primarily just makes the grind smoother and quicker. Whereas with arenas, if you're not good enough to advance in the next rank, you're not good enough.
That's right.
You can't just play
You get
X
good.
amount more matches and reap the same rewards as
You
the
have
more
to get
skilled
good.
players. Compositions and synergy will be key.
Mm-hmm.
The matches will be long because this is before any sort of heal dampening.
Well, you did a
It's
lot of
arena
damage
in
back
its
then,
raw
too.
form, and only the most sweaty will survive.
This is where the big boys play, huh? Look at the adjective. Play.
An astute observation, but I'd like to focus on that other
The
adjective.
fuck was that?
Survive. Classic PvP, you may have noticed,
The fuck
is
does that
on the
even mean?
bursty side. Just a little bit. I swear I'll be able to control my character next time I resurrect.
Yeah, maybe.
Sometimes you blink and you'll be at the graveyard. This was also a huge change in the Burning Crusade, however, with the addition of a very special stat, and that's resilience. This
I didn't
reduced the
like
player's
resilience.
chance to be on the receiving end of a critical strike, and not only that, even if they did get crit,
Yeah,
they would
I
take
didn't like that
reduced
at all.
damage. You still had spiky damage, but it was nowhere near on the level of an elemental.
The reason why I didn't like it is because you didn't do crits. Like, I want to do crits, man. I want to hit those big dick numbers. And if I can't do a big crit on somebody, I'm not going to feel as good about myself. And I wish that resilience would work differently. I like PvP power and PvP like survivability. Like, I like that stat a lot more.
Common, literally globaling you every 2 minutes, like with what you have in Classic. It makes for a much more methodical style of PvP, which some like and some hate. It really is big though, and combined with the finer tuned class balance, the face of PvP was changed with the Burning Crusade expansion.
I think Burning Crusade
and next,
PvP was
we
better.
Just have some other stats.
Personally, I think it was.
Expertise saw a release in the Burning Crusade, which when stacked, reduced an enemy's chance to dodge or parry you. Armor penetration is another stat that rose to the forefront.
Dude.
This, as you would guess, allowed you to ignore a certain amount of your target's armor for your attacks.
I really liked armor pen. I wish that they brought that back into the game, actually. Like, that would be really cool. I'd like to see them add just more abilities in general in the game. And unfortunately, that probably won't happen, but I'd love to see it happen. Yeah, just more abilities and like more stats. I just want more stats and like more things. I want the game to become complex enough to where I have to think about it while I'm asleep.
I think technically first introduced in Classic, but it became a much more common stat in BC. And in combination with resilience and expertise,
yeah, I like that.
You really had quite the selection of stats to choose from and how you wanted to build your character. One of the things to aid you in this was jewel crafting, as players could cut gems into special stat increases. Resilience, like I mentioned, expertise, stamina, strength. These would fit into special colored sockets and gear pieces, and it was much more in depth in its original form. Today, gear pieces have a chance to randomly proc a socket, and you slap one in there, and that's it. However, in BC, these sockets had their own color, and if you matched the correct color gems, you would receive a socket bonus. You could only get certain stats from certain colored gems, so it created this choice of just zerging one stat, or maybe getting less optimal stats if the bonus was good enough.
Did you guys like that? I liked having to put gems in my gear. I thought that was fun. Like, I don't know what the fuck ever happened with that. Like, I liked, that was cool because it made it to where you would customize your own armor. And now I feel like I get a piece of gear and that's it. Like, I want to be able to customize, upgrade, enchant, reforge, gem, and fucking put profession enchants on my gear. It just makes it feel more like it's yours. And it gives you more things that you can do to make your character better.
And not only this,
I don't know, I thought it was
special
cool.
meta gems that you could only put in your head socket.
Oh, yeah.
These are typically more powerful.
Dude, fuck
providing
these
unique
gems,
affixes
man.
Instead
They
of
were
just
great,
raw
I loved them,
stats.
but fuck these gems.
So this, combined with the new stats, made the gear choices that much more interesting.
Yep.
And the loot system as a whole really thrived in the Burning Crusade. But there's more to it than all of this. It's easy to just list the new features introduced with BC, but what about the more philosophical effects? For the next items on our list, I wanted to focus on the more abstract aspects of the expansion, and even re-releases in general. Returning to Classic for a moment, I posed this question earlier in the video. Is it still hard?
No.
Well,
BC will
in the
be
context of Classic raiding, no, not really. Raids and bosses that took several months to clear in the original release took just hours to clear in the re-release.
BC will be very easy.
Skill as players has grown exponentially since release.
Yeah.
And remains to be one of the bigger weak points with the game.
I
at least
agree
in
with
my
that.
opinion. And if the re-release has...
I think the game's too easy. Like, honestly, if they buffed everything in Classic WoW by double, if they, like, doubled the mob health in every boss, I would be happy. But it's like, I don't think that even matters. Like, the problem is, like, if they do that, like, realistically, like, conceptually in my mind, I would want that. But realistically, what would that really mean? That would mean that we couldn't bring Ret Paladins, we couldn't bring, you know, other classes, because we'd want to have, like, the best group possible. And, like, I don't know, I think it's like BC will be better than Classic. Let me tell you guys that. BC will be a lot better than Classic.
Proven anything, it's that the skill gap between vanilla release and today is incredibly large.
Yep.
The skill gap between the Burning Crusade and current is another story, however. Undoubtedly, we've grown in skill since then. Do you remember your first time picking up a controller? It's like those movies or commercials where they're pretending to play a video game.
Yeah.
Just look at the old raiding videos. The best raiders in Classic were a bunch of keyboard-turning, backpedaling 12-year-olds. These are the people who held your life in their hands. What I'm getting at here is
What a
if we were
great way to look at
multiply
it.
skill on a graph between
Yeah.
vanilla and today, it would look something like this. By the time the Burning Crusade came out, we were probably around here as far as the skill gap is concerned, because your first time doing anything leaves an insane amount of room for improvement. And as a result, the raids were tuned
I've had
to a
experience with
difficulty
that.
level much closer to today than in vanilla.
Here's the thing.
People will still clear through the raids faster, no doubt.
Yeah, here's the thing. Is the reason why the vanilla raids are so easy is because of world buffs. Like, that's the biggest factor of why they're easy. It's not even because people know the game really well. It's because they have world buffs. And in Burning Crusade, you're not going to have world buffs. And obviously, BC will still be easy. People will still clear it very quickly. Obviously, LOL, no? Really? You think that stats that increase your damage by over double does not influence the difficulty of the raids that you're doing? You think the fact that you have bonus 20% crit chance going into the raid is not going to affect you? Are you fucking kidding me? World buffs are massively powerful in Classic, and stacking them is insane. Imagine having a Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer. Imagine having Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer. That's all apparently I can do. But you have the ZG buff. You have Dire Maul buffs. They're massive. They are massive. That's why classic raids are such a joke, is because of world buffs.
But it would be nowhere near the level it's being done in Classic. In the Burning Crusade, you had many bosses that were deemed to be unkillable until they got a nerf by Blizzard. You hear legends even today of pre-nerf Muru or Kael'thas. And when people bring up raiding in the Burning Crusade,
that's the main fight I'm
the
looking forward to
conversation
doing.
will
Out of all
inevitably
of BC,
turn to how much of a
Kael'thas.
struggle it was, even with 3 to 4 years of experience
so
by the
fucking
most
fun.
hardcore. Ultimately,
Probably
this will
one-shot it.
depend on Blizzard if they release these bosses in their original or post-nerf states.
They need to release some
It definitely
full
has the
pre-nerf.
potential, though.
Full pre-nerf. Everything. Yeah. Min-maxing.
And since I mentioned the word, let's explore this further.
Except
There's no
I don't think
denying
they should
that
do Kara
Classic
pre-nerf.
is a game of optimization. It's before
Maybe
a
not
time
Gruul
where
either,
everything is
but,
hyper-balanced,
depends.
and that any item or buff that could give you an edge is disabled, nerfed, or removed in the context of raiding or competitive PvP. This creates the perfect microcosm for min-maxing. Obscure level 40 quest rewards can make or break the meta of endgame PvP. Rest assured that if it were in the game, a level 5 quest that requires you to kill 4,627 boars for plus 5 strength would be grinded out ad nauseum for that 0.0001% increase in EP size.
Yep.
And those precious, precious parses.
So sad.
You think the fact that
I don't know
this
why
red
they take
buff
it that
is only
seriously,
available
dude.
to the opposite faction is enough for you to not get it?
Oh, dude.
Just pay for that second account and go level that priest alt and mind control yourself to get it.
You guys know how this works, right? So if you want to get Warchief's Blessing on a Horde, or Rallying Cry at the Dragon Slayer on Alliance, or other way around, Rallying Cry on Horde, Warchief's Blessing on Alliance, you have to have a mage, or not, God, have a fucking priest. I'm still mad about that fucking debuff, man. Have them mind control you while it goes out, and it'll hit you. It's actually insane how much prep they do.
And yes,
I'm
this is
still mad
something
about
that
that
actually
debuff, man.
happens. Some guilds require it, in fact.
Or
Flasking in
buff.
PvE, flasking in PvP,
Yep.
flasking in ERP.
Hey, whatever
The
it
game
takes.
is drowning in a deluge of sweat so thick you can almost smell it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a speedrunning convention. Okay, I'm being a bit mean now. If that's what you like, that's what you like.
Yeah.
I've dabbled in it here and there. But as the game has evolved, awkward time sinks such as this have faded away.
Thank God.
Many are surprised to
I hate
learn
world
that it
buff farming.
started as early as the Burning Crusade. The
I
buffs
hate this
themselves,
shit.
and even many items, had their effectiveness reduced for level
Mm-hmm.
70 content. Gone
Yep.
are the days of half the server camping a level 40 rare with a 2-day spawn timer for a green level 36 trinket, and the
What
playing
a
field
shame.
is evened out between those who have 6 hours a day to play and those who have 20 hours a day to play. This can be seen
I
as a
remember that
negative
picture.
or a positive.
I haven't seen that one in a
depending on
long
your
time.
opinion.
It's good to
It's
see him
definitely
again.
more casual friendly in this aspect, which some like
Yeah.
and some hate. Typically, if you're the type who doesn't like the min-max culture, you're going to like it more since it requires less of a time
Mm-hmm.
investment to stay on the same playing field. There's less preparation involved, and it's more in the actual gameplay. Personally, it's never bothered me, but I can see where people can get that opinion. It's like inviting friends over for a game of Monopoly, and having that overly competitive friend who spends the last 2 weeks preparing studying tournament Monopoly play, if that exists, and has been practicing 14 hours a day. And that's not to say that there isn't min-maxing in the game. I mean, I just got done explaining how people lament on the extreme difficulty of Burning Crusade raiding. If you were a progression guild, it almost demanded min-maxing. It's just a more conventional style of building your character properly and managing.
You didn't have to bring a million fucking things into the raid, dude. Like, you could just be in the raid and do the shit in the raid. It wasn't complicated, wasn't ridiculous. You just had the shit that you brought into the raid, and then you did the raid. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of fucking 2 hours of getting buffs before the raid, and then somebody purges them off while you're running through Blackrock Mountain. It's so annoying, dude. Hydra was trash, literally. Yeah, but so's MC.
Your rotation, as opposed to farming world bus for 3 hours before raid, or camping level 40 rares.
Yep.
Speaking of progression though, next we have something that always surprises people in the
I
first
love
year.
attunements.
Raids in the Burning
Need to bring those back.
were extremely unique in the fact that most of them were out at the expansion's release.
Yep.
There's an asterisk tied to that, as they were locked by gear checks and attunements. To zone into these raids, you had to finish the raid in the previous tier through a massive attunement
Bring
chain.
back attunements and make them account
Technically,
wide.
it was within the player's control of when they entered these raids. This is unheard of today. Even in vanilla, we had just the Molten Core and an Ixion release, and then the other raids, of course, slowly over time when Blizzard said so. Never before, nor after the Burning Crusade expansion, was this type of freedom given to players. And in the context of re-releases,
think about
it'll
that,
be a very
man.
interesting thing to see. How
Like, I went to fuck, like, there's this, you need to have like a PhD to understand this shit. Like, that's the way it used to be, man. I love this. I fucking loved complicated, convoluted bullshit like this, because it separates the people that have all day to think about the game from the people with real lives, and that's where I come out ahead.
As players can progress. In the context of re-releases, where you're fighting against that increased skill and familiarity, this will be something that's wholly unique to the Burning Crusade expansion. You never know with the most extreme of the extreme, but for the average guild, I think the progress will be much slower compared to that of Classic, and it'll be quite the intense race, spanning months most likely. And one last point that I wanted to bring up, and I don't want to get too crazy with this because I'm an editor, not a programmer, but in the recreation of Classic, in their BlizzCon panel in 2018, they explained how Classic came to be and how they sort of scraped together the old source code and data from back in the day. It turned out that an ex-employee or something just happened to have the data on an old hard drive, and that it barely had 1.12, and a little bit before.
What the fuck,
With the 6-phase schedule, they covered most of the major stuff. All of the raids, of course. The PvP system.
Some guy just had it.
And even certain items deemed to be too powerful for the initial re-release. Some players, however, lament on a more detailed re-release, where things such as class balance are also tied into the 6-phase schedule.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
This changed wildly from the release of the original to 1.12. Many of you know about that bleed talent that hunters used to have as their crown jewel of the survival tree. Or maybe that death coil didn't have the horrify effect, and so on. Abilities added, abilities removed, abilities buffed to extreme heights.
That would have been really cool if they brought it out with 1.1.
Now, in my opinion, at the end of the day, this doesn't have as big of an effect on raid progression as people...
You know what else would be really cool? If I did BWL. It's time. My raid is ready. Boys and girls. The moment is here, the time is at hand.